This podcast is sponsored by YOLO-Games.com. Spend your way to happiness with YOLO-Games.com.
Go
and are just some of the words that you may hear in today's podcast. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome to the Perfect Information Podcast, a board game podcast running away from its past with me, Yorgos Panagiotidis, and the neuralgic malingerer,
Ben Maddox. Feels like forever, doesn't it?
Yes.
Since we've sat here opposite each other, Georgios?
Yes, not long enough. No, wait, that came out wrong.
Too long. That is what you meant, I assume?
Yes, too long.
I assume you've been missing my society, Georgios.
Quite. Yes, missing is in fact the word I'm looking for.
Because my society is one of the highest societies, Georgios. I've got the best society. All the best societies, Georgios.
We have all the best everythings.
And here we sit in our world. And I think currently, actually, if you look at the shit that's happened in the world,
yeah,
we probably snuck in to the top 10 of best things in the world at the moment. I mean, considering the competition, I think we've just snuck in.
I think
under the bar.
I think I would generally agree. Yes, I think given the state of everything else, I think we're the top 10 best things that people can experience right now.
I mean, there were times, the Renaissance, the Enlightenment.
Yeah, I remember that.
The great flourishing of the sexual revolution in the 1960s. I mean, we wouldn't have had a snowball's chance in hell to be in the top million.
I agree.
I think it's an indicator of our times.
Yes.
We've snuck into the top 10, Georgios.
No, I think it has to be an indicator of just how great we are.
You hold on to it, Georgios.
Yeah.
You hold on to it for the next 4 years, and when you're weeping, hold on to that like a teddy bear in your beddy beds.
No, I'm not weeping. I'm see, you know these 5 stages of grief? I always go through them backwards.
Okay.
I accept.
Right.
And I'm depressed.
Yeah.
And I think right now I'm gone past bargaining. I'm full on.
Are you horny
anger.
now?
No, I'm full on in anger mode.
Because that's the one they don't talk about.
No,
it's the one they don't talk about. And
it's 3B, I know.
I've experienced grief, Georgios. Bloody hell, I had a boner for weeks. For weeks, George. I couldn't go out in public.
Well,
I was busting zips.
Yeah, some people, stress eat, others stress masturbate.
That's right. Yeah. It's no stress, Georgios. It's just pure bliss from morning till night.
Yes, bliss, definitely.
God, I've been eating a lot of zinc supplements recently. Anyway, Georgios, what are we talking about this los weekos?
We're talking about, funnily enough, things that fall out of favor. Like, I don't know.
Rationality?
Freedom of the press.
People of minorities.
Liberal consensus, maybe. Let's say humanism.
The Human League, exactly. They were very big in the 80s, and now they've completely fallen out of favour.
Yes.
The Sheffield music scene in general had a brief peak with the Arctic Monkeys, but now it's back into the sloughs of nothingness again. I was working as a waitress in a cocktail bar when I met you, Georgios.
Yeah, now I don't want you anymore.
Don't you want me?
No.
You know I don't believe it when you say that you won't see me, Georgios.
I know. And now we're quoting random lyrics because we ran out of sensible things to say.
All right, so we're talking about games that fall out of favour, but not specifically games that fall out of favour, but why they fall out of favour. What is the reason for this, do we think?
Exactly. And there's an interesting split here because I am quite certain that there are a number of games that have fallen out of favour for you. And I went through my gaming collection. I noticed one thing in particular, in that the games themselves never really as such seem to fall out of favor in my collection, but they seem to have fallen out of favor either due to the people I've played it with or to the group, with the group I played it with. So by extension, I don't play them even though I would like to.
But you curate your collection a lot more than me, right? The turnaround, you sell things that don't get played and that sort of stuff much more than, whereas I just hoard them and sleep in them and weep.
Actually, I just started doing that. I'm not selling them, but I think at some point I will. I did trade a few things the last couple of years. I think I'll do this more often because there are a bunch of games, even though I like them a lot, even though they're like part of my gaming history, I find myself either not playing them or just realizing that the chances of getting a group together to play this specific game are fairly slim. So I am looking at a lot of games that I really, really like, that I really enjoyed, and I would love to play again. And thinking about just, selling them off to somebody who actually gets to play them. And it's a bit weird in that sense that I feel both nostalgic and sort of sad about letting these games go, so to speak, because I like those games. If I had the chance to play them again, I would. It just doesn't seem like I will.
Okay, so because I think there are different categories of games falling out of favour. It might not just be that you don't like the game. Mm-hmm. There's other extenuating circumstances that dictate, right? But I want to go to the beginning.
Okay. Before
we go on to this. What do you think it is about a game that makes you fall in love with it?
It's potential. It's always its potential. It's the suggestion of what kind of experience you can have playing it. And again, the game that exemplifies it perfectly for me, and which is very high on your shit list, I believe, is Twilight Imperium.
I knew you were going to say that, George.
Yes, I'm starting to feel like people are going to think it's my favorite game, and I'm not sure it is.
It kind of is, though, isn't it?
It may be, but I do feel like of all the games in my collection, this is the one that I always feel has the biggest potential to be fantastic, which is not the same as to say it's always going to deliver that experience. But I do feel that this is the game, when I look at it, when I pull up the lid, what it says to me, all the bits, all the rules, all the stuff in there, it says there's excellence, there's fun, there's joy, there's just excitement locked in these components, in this game. Are you going to see it now?
Has it ever?
Yes, it actually has. Yes, it hasn't. I mean, it's a long game. It has its ups and downs when I experience it. There are moments where I was very frustrated, and there are moments where they were really, really fun. But in general, this just exuberance, this excitement of getting to play, of sort of sinking into this huge opera, space opera, just works for me in a way that no other game I have played or own does. I'm not in the sense that no other game is as good as Twilight Imperium. I'm not saying that at all. I think there are quite a few games that are far better.
There certainly are.
But I think no other game promises the things that Twilight Imperium does and delivers the kind of experience that Twilight Imperium does.
There's a reason I can't hate Twilight Imperium, right? Because I think you're correct. I think Twilight Imperium was conceived with this idea of greatness. It's wonderfully aspirational and ambitious.
Yeah.
This is not something that's just put out there to cash in. This is something that was conceived with love and a real desire to have people experience something truly transformative, even if that's going over the top. The issue I find with it, though, is I just don't think it does. So I like its conception, I like its aspiration, I don't like it as a game.
Right, yeah. No, that makes sense. I think, we always outside of the show, we always talk about at some point we're going to do a Twilight Imperium slice, at least, where I talk about why I enjoy it so much, but I'm not going to argue that the rules don't need a rapid overhaul, that there aren't bits in there that are just laughably bad. They are. There are bits in there that just plain do not work. I mean, that's delving into this game, I think, a bit too much. But basically, I think that what we love about the game is what it promises us. It's what makes us long for the moment we get to pull it out of the shelf again and put it on the table. It's the reason why I find it difficult to let go of games that I love, even though I don't play them. It's the promise of enjoyment. It's the promise of fun. It's the promise of community even.
You see, for me, I guess there are two reasons why I fall in love with a game. And one is kind of very similar to every other kind of art form. Part of the reason I fall in love with certain art forms is because I'm an actor. Also, I dabble in writing, and I'm writing a music album at the moment. And so I dabble into these things. And part of the reason I fall in love with certain things is I see it, and I cannot conceive of ever doing that myself. I think this is so original, so interesting, so accomplished, that this is so far above any level I will ever reach. And I admire it and I love it. And that happens to me with movies, it happens to me with books, it happens to me with music, it happens to me with this. But there's something specifically gamey as well. There's another reason I fall in love with a game. Not just the sort of aesthetic appreciation, but certain games I just get. 2 games recently, well, sort of over the last 2 years, that fit for me into this category.
Right.
Lewis and Clark and Guilds of London.
Okay.
The minute I played them, the first turn, I thought, I get this.
Right.
I know this. I lose games a hell of a lot, right? I played a super secret Uwe Rosenberg prototype last night, right? And I was absolutely trounced by everyone. It was terrible. I was still in my post-Trump drunkenness, but nevertheless, I was absolutely terrible at it. But Lewis and Clark, I played the other night.
Right.
I've only ever lost that game once. Guilds of London, I've only ever lost once. There's something about the way the mechanisms come together that just clicks in my head. And that also inspires me to love a game.
All right, so it's the idea of sort of seeing something, well, not familiar, but so, well, let's be super pretentious today. Seeing some kind of your own mind space in this game.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's that thing. It's that thing when you listen to a song.
Right.
And you go, my God, they wrote that song about me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, and you have a game and you say, wow, it's almost as if they designed this game with my particular skill set in mind.
Yeah.
And I think that's a specifically gamery thing.
Oh, okay.
Which that sort of, I'm good at this aspect of games. Because I can enjoy games I'm not good at, but I especially love games I am, you know.
Yeah. Well, I think that's not particularly gamery as much as humanery.
Right. I mean, I guess, you know, you think about the career, if you ever end up going into the career that you want to do, why are you interested in something? Probably because you've shown some aptitude at it, right?
Yes, I think that helps, but not necessarily, no. This is definitely a strong part of it. If you like things that you feel good at, yes. But,
okay, brief question, George.
Yeah.
This is sort of a sidebar, but
okay.
What do you think? You love something, and then you become good at it, or you're good at it, and that inspires you to love it?
Probably more the first one than the second one.
You think?
Yeah, I do think that you love doing something, you do it over and over again, eventually you have the experience to be good at it, as opposed to you're good at something and you learn to love it. I think a lot of it has to do with psychology, really. I think I'm tutoring kids. I've been tutoring kids for like almost 10 years now. Most of them basically fall into basically these two camps. Some of these kids are bad at certain subjects because they never had this experience of, oh, I get this. I know how this works. I get this positive reinforcement from, I solved this equation, or I wrote an essay that actually makes sense and can articulate what this poem or whatever is about. But that's not necessarily true. Some people, and maybe the divide is somewhere in the creative line, in that a lot of people love to write poems when they're teenagers, or songs. And I'm not going to sort of break anyone's heart now. All of them are shit.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of mine are terrible.
No, but the point is, it's not about whether they're good or not. It's about expressing yourself. It's about using these mental capacities and just doing this, expressing yourself in an artistic form. It's a reward in and of itself.
Oh, Jane, do you feel my pain? I've gone insane. My horse is lame. What do you think?
It's I can tell that you love it.
I love Jane.
Yeah.
Jane, why did you leave me? My horse is lame now.
Pretty much. But my original point was basically, yes, you keep going, and eventually you learn. If you want to learn, you get better, and then you have something that's workable. It's something that people are actually going to respond to. It's, how I spend most of my life talking, and now I'm part of a podcast that's not complete shit.
Right.
Yeah.
10,000 hours.
Basically,
more than 10,000 hours opening that fucking flappy hole.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, so we sort of briefly discussed about why we fall in love with something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now, as I see it, I'm a very binary person, right? I like things to be simple, black or white, rich or poor, monkey or la land.
Okay, I don't get that, but go ahead.
It's a very high level, Illuminati category, Georgios.
Yes.
If you're not in the Illuminatus, you won't understand it.
Well, it turns out neither are Jay-Z and Beyonce.
That's true. I see there's two categories, basically, that a game falls out of favour. Mm-hmm. One is that you stop enjoying it, right? We'll go into that in a minute, but you stop enjoying it. Or secondly, it becomes unworkable as a concept.
Oh, okay, interesting.
What I mean, you can't play it anymore for whatever reason. For external factors, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. There's something intrinsic in the game that makes you stop enjoying it. That's the first category. And there's something outside the game that dictates it won't be played, right?
Okay.
So like kids, time, jobs, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, but that doesn't necessarily mean it falls out of favor so much as it doesn't get played. I don't think the two are the same.
Can you explain the difference?
Well, I mean, maybe this is a linguistic barrier that we're just now discovering, but when I think of something falling out of favor, it implies that it was in favor before, meaning it was appreciated, well-liked, cherished for whatever reason. And when it falls out of favor, all these things stop.
You see, and that's it. That's why I'm dividing it into these two categories, because I don't necessarily see that. I think you hear a lot of people. Now, this might be people retrofitting an argument, right?
Possibly.
But you hear a lot of people talk about, remember we used to play this game and we just don't play it anymore because we just don't have time. I don't role play anymore because I just don't have time. And that doesn't mean they've stopped loving the thing. And it doesn't mean that all of those things that you loved about it aren't still intrinsic to the experience, but it falls out of favour because external factors dictate it has to.
Actually, again, another sidebar, and we're going to delve into something we don't delve into often. With role-playing, I think it's a fascinating case of where age, distance, actually makes you forget everything that's shit about role-playing. Because I remember that very well. I used to be big into role-playing, did a role-playing blog in German, all that kind of stuff. I still have a strong fondness of certain aspects of role-playing. But about 5 or 6 years ago, I joined in a game of, I think it was D&D, maybe it was something else, I don't know, just fairly straightforward role-playing game of a group that was really having a great time with it, telling me great stories. I thought, this sounds interesting, let's sit in. They were all quite a bit younger than me. I was about 30 at that time, maybe a bit older, and they were almost 20, 19, 20, about this area. My experience was the following. When you're 19 or 20, your role-playing games are a bunch of bullshit.
I'm sure.
They are chit-chat, they are meandering, they are pointless, that's not to say that they're not fun. They are great, great fun. When you're 20, you can afford this kind of fun. When you're 30 and you think of all the great times you've had, or 35, when you think of all these great times you've had with a role-playing game, you remember these tense moments, and these deep moments, you remember this excitement, and they are spread out far between. Because we forget the chit-chat, we forget the bullshit, we forget the really juvenile kind of tension of two almost grown men trying to outdo one another and playing the alpha, or whatever you want to call that. I sat there, thought these were all nice guys. They weren't stupid or anything. But I realized this is not who I am anymore. I can't play like this. This is not. I remember these games, and I can't play these games anymore.
I have a role playing group that I have every week.
Right. Yeah.
And they're not RPGers. Right. This campaign is the first time they've played an RPG, right?
Okay.
But they're all creatives. They're all sort of they're movie journalists, and it's incredibly fun. And yes, it is meandering, and yes, they go off. And I find my job as a DM is often just to sit back and they talk to each other in character.
No, that works perfectly. But that's not meandering. But
I think you're right. I think they're all of a certain age, and so they have a commitment to hold it all together.
Yeah,
exactly. Apart from when bloody Pokemon Go out, and literally I had 2 sessions where at the end I had to say, you can't play fucking Pokemon Go during this, because there were people just Pokemon bloody going. You're never going to listen to this, Bridget, but fucking Pokemon Go, Christ on a bike. I prepared. Anyway, that was a sidebar on RPGs. So let's talk about the first thing.
Right.
When you fall out of love with a game, what is it? Is it overplaying? Is it just you advance as a gamer and you realise that these childish things need to be put away? What is it? What makes you fall
not
in
at
love
all.
with the game?
I think, and I'm going to be very, very predictable here in that I will just follow up the reasons why I love a game. I love a game because of its potential. I stop loving a game when this potential has been played out, when I've seen everything that the game has to offer, when I feel like whenever I sit down and play this game, I'll know what's going to happen. I know how it's going to happen. The only difference is going to be who will win and maybe which card will be, or which die roll will be the deciding factor.
You really hate high-level play, right?
Explain high-level play.
Well, you've said to me a number of times that you dislike a game when the game... everyone knows the game so well that it becomes about very strategic planning of your turn.
It's sort of where the metagaming becomes about, where your knowledge of the strategies available to you dictate how you're going to play in anticipation of what your opponents are doing.
Right.
That kind of play. Yeah, I don't have time for that.
And do you think that's an inevitability with... Certainly, I think it's an inevitability with games where chance isn't a huge factor.
Right.
But do you think that contributes to you once your ability at the game gets to such a level that it becomes about only the opponent and not defeating the game? That makes you fall out in love with it?
No, not quite. I think my focus is very much on other players. It's why I don't dislike Eurogames. I really don't. But it's the reason why I just cannot be more than mildly interested in certain Eurogames, because they do not require me to actually deal with my opponents. They require me only to deal with the rules and with the calculations and with occasionally maybe taking a risk on one decision or another. Which, again, I'm not disparaging at all, but there's only so much enjoyment I can get out of this kind of game. I need this extra kick where I am surprised by the other players, where something happens that makes me laugh, that something happens where I don't see coming, where I have to adapt, where I don't feel like everything has been destroyed, everything is gone now. I like these kind of moments. I like these moments where I feel we are interacting as players through the medium of the game, as opposed to I'm interacting with the game, with the players acting as some sort of obstacle to my victory. This is, again, there's no judgment intended here. It's just the way I'm trying to phrase these differences.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the one example I always think of when people talk about this is Machikoro.
Right.
And I think Machikoro had the issue. It had two things that I think make me fall out of love with the game. One, the depth of the play isn't strong enough to hold up to repeated plays.
Right.
It's super accessible. It's super easy. You see the strategies on the first time you play it. You think, I'll play that again because I'll test that out. 5 times into it, you've exhausted everything. Everyone is doing exactly the same thing because that's the way to do it. But also, Machikoro was interesting for me in that I hated the expansion.
Oh.
When the Harbour expansion came out and the way the game played changed... and you shuffled them into the deck and you didn't know when certain buildings were going to come out. I hated it because I liked the idea of, okay, I do this, then I do this, then I do this, then I do this, and I have a path. Mm-hmm. Harbour removed that path. And the problem is, people would say, why don't you just play the base game? And that's a sensible suggestion.
Right.
But there's something about, if an expansion is bad... Mm-hmm. It retroactively contaminates the whole game for me. And Machikoro fell off a cliff, and it wasn't until I played Valeria Card Kingdoms that I could enjoy that Machikoro-esque experience again.
It's interesting because, the two small details I want to bring up. One, really completely random trivia bit. I believe you played the American or the English version of Machikoro?
No, it was the German version.
The German version, because the German version has the randomizing effect in it. You don't need the Harbour expansion for that.
Oh, then I didn't read the rules because they were in German.
Right, basically, because I played the basic version without the expansion, we used the basic setup without randomizing effects for the first few games when I introduced it to new players. And that was fine. And then we introduced the randomizing effect. And to me, Machikoro, I think the one thing that surprised me about what you said about Machikoro was the word strategy. Because I don't feel Machikoro is a particularly strategic or aspires to be a particularly strategic game. It is gambling. It is basically gambling in a box without all these lacking both negative connotations as well as any real life risk. You're not actually betting money there. It is literally gambling. It's funny and it's silly. I think the biggest drawback the game has is the fact that it can go a bit too long depending on which cards show up and depending on how the dice fall, which is something that most strongly dice-based games, it's a problem that most dice-based games seems to have, and that if you roll badly, the game is just going to be bad. It's just going to be uninteresting. If you occasionally roll high or occasionally get started, which I think either the first or the second expansion sort of helps you with, and that you sort of always gets a little bit of money to get you going. You get to this experience, which to me is the essential Machikoro experience. You roll the dice and they go, yay, I can buy this, 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 and this. And you go roll the dice and you go, oh crap, it's your turn.
Yeah.
It's a quick, snappy little game. And if it's over in 15 minutes or it's over in 20 minutes even, you're fine. If it goes beyond that, you tire out.
And when games become rote, when they become a promenade, when you know exactly, and I think you said it, when they become, you know the exact format of play, then for me, I fall out in love with them. And I think my great example for this is One Night Ultimate Werewolf. Mm-hmm. In that, because it's so short, because it's so accessible, it's a game that can be played again and again and again and again and again.
Right.
But you very quickly realize that it's always a matter of doing X to do Y to get Z. And it repeats itself again and again and again. And for me, I can't even contemplate playing that game anymore. It's just so rote now. And I think social deduction games fall into it. They become very rote very quickly.
I think, yes, I think that is a danger. I agree. I don't think it's inherent to the games itself. And so far that I don't think the game itself produces such a rote experience. I do think that, especially with a group, where there's a strong sense of groupthink happening, and it doesn't need to be always the same group. Sometimes it's enough to have the same, let's say, dominant people in there to sort of steer direction. You will always end up in the same place with this game. And I agree with you. Most social deduction games need a stronger, overarching, let's say, social structure to keep it fresh. And I think the one night games sort of try to circumvent that by putting out these expansions, these new roles, these new rules
that are inevitably zany and completely buckle gameplay. I think they're terrible. I think they're almost without question terrible.
I don't think I've actually played the daybreak rules.
I think they break is apt because they break the game. Any chance you ever had of guessing anybody, which is where the whole joy lies in these games, are removed by these things that are just given over to comedy, essentially.
Yeah, but I think that's ultimately the reason why something like One Night Ultimate Werewolf works. It's why something like Machikoro also works. It's the small, tiny gaming experience. It's not the full gaming experience that you kind of recognize and enjoy if you're in the hobby a while. It's not... I'm not saying it's not like, I had these meaningful decisions, I had strategies, I had tactical decisions, so on. Machikoro doesn't want to do that. One Night doesn't want to do that. I mean, you can do that if you have the kind of meta game where that works, where you do have people sort of bluffing and double bluffing, where the troublemaker claims to be... Well, no, actually, the villager claims to be the troublemaker who switched roles apart, where the werewolf then starts claiming to be the troublemaker.
But then again...
the troublemaker claims to be the troublemaker, and so on and so forth.
And that becomes rote after a while. Even people being random and throwing in interesting things and lying becomes rote after a while.
It's been my experience, though. It all becomes that way because you... Well, no, it hasn't actually been my experience. My experience with One Night has never been rote. It's always been surprising, it's always been silly, it's always been fun, but... I've never experienced it as a game that overstays its welcome. I mean, it's basically hardwired into the rules themselves that the experience you're going to have is not going to be deep, it's not going to be complex, it's not going to be particularly strategic. It's going to be funny, it's going to be silly, and you're going to laugh. And after 4 minutes, you're going to start again.
How do you feel about the idea that it's just inevitable that if you play something or watch something or listen to something enough, you're going to end up hating it? Do you think that's right?
Only in the sense that if you do not choose to watch it or play it, then yes. If you feel like, not pressure, but if you feel like your gaming group keeps playing the same game over and over and over again, even though you don't really want to, but you kind of go along because you don't want to be a dick, then yeah, sure, definitely. If I were to play, to join a board game night outside of my own home regularly, and they keep playing the same game, even though it's one I love, I could see me sort of being tired of it after a while.
Okay, let's move on to this other area that where the external influences come in and interrupt the potentiality of playing a certain thing. Now, all I'm saying is this is a possible idea. Now, I'm just going to give you some examples of things that might undercut this, that I think maybe makes it a bit of a myth, right? Mm-hmm. I've taught a lot of people in my time. I was a teacher for a long time, and I still am to some degree. Often I would talk about books, and people would say, I don't read. And I would say, why don't you read? And they say, look, I just don't have the time. And that's not right. No. What they mean is, I don't enjoy it. I don't have the inclination.
It's work for me.
Yeah, because reading is supposed to be this great paragon of sort of human civilization. It's a very virtuous thing to do to read a book, right?
Right.
You know, there's enough people walking around bragging about the books they've read. One of them being me. And so people don't want to say, I'm not really into books, mate. They say, oh, I don't have time.
Yeah, right.
And so you have certain games, and people say, I just don't have time to play that game. Mm-hmm. They have time to binge watch The Sopranos on Netflix, but they don't have time to play this 2-hour game. Do you think the notion of external influences preventing you is a fallacy? I guess is what I'm trying to ask.
Yes and no. I think when you brought up this point earlier, I was drawing more parallels to my own situation, with kids and having much less frequent gaming opportunities. To that extent, I don't think it's true. I don't think playing less actually makes you enjoy things less or makes you just dislike them or anything. But now that I thought about it, I do think there are external factors that do affect your enjoyment of games. I mean, for obvious reasons, even though I raved about this game, I'm not going to enjoy Secret Hitler for a long time. And to draw it slightly less awkward, I think once the parallels became apparent to me in Puerto Rico, because I was as blind as most people when I first played it. Once I realized that sort of this unintentional or
just neglectful, I think.
Just neglectful way of handling certain rules, I did not feel comfortable playing this game.
Yeah, I played Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is wonderful. I feel uncomfortable playing.
Yeah.
And even though I don't want to.
Yeah.
When I play it, I just think I feel uneasy now.
Exactly. I mean, there are a lot of games that make me feel the same way. I mean, there's Tanto Cuore, which makes me really uncomfortable.
I wouldn't even,
I mean, it's basically Dominion clone, so I do have Dominion at home, so it's fine if I do want a game like that. I have Dominion, but I played it once. Awkward experience. Really uncomfortable. It was in Essen actually. There were young women dressed in maid outfits explaining the game. They were as lovely as they could be in the circumstances, but good God, I felt so uncomfortable playing this game.
I mean, I guess this is not an external factor that I factored in. I was thinking of more sort of prosaic things,
right? Just
like jobs and babies and things like this. But you're right. Certain external factors, i.e., political issues, things like this can factor into a game falling out of favour. Once the scales have been lifted from your eyes, you go, well, I simply can't anymore. And everyone tells me, and we bring it up all the time, and it'll be the last time, I promise, but everyone tells me how wonderful Mombasa is. But a game that has a smiling native woman offering the produce of her land to the patrician-esque white man sat in the tent, I just can't. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't care how great the mechanics are. I just can't.
Yeah, that's Memoir 44 and me, yeah.
Yeah, it's war games and me. The idea of me, especially these sort of general level war games where you're moving troops, they're people.
Yeah.
They're my grandfather's generation, right?
Exactly.
And it's just... And people say, oh, don't be squeamish. They're educational, and fine. I'm not saying you're a bad person if you're into it, but it hits that sort of squeamish button for me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's. I mean, interestingly enough, I did play a variant of the Memoir 44 system. I think it was Battles of Westeros, and I really enjoyed that. It was really great fun.
Battle
for some
lore
reason,
is
that
amazing.
Works for me. Yeah,
Battle lore is fantastic. It's wizards, it's orcs, it's people that aren't fucking people, so I can deal with that. And people say, oh, you're being an idiot. Fine, maybe I am, but I can't, it doesn't sit, it doesn't settle.
Yeah, exactly. No.
Okay, so to finish, Georgios.
Yes, I don't speak Finnish, but go ahead. And that's for Finnish listeners who have now tuned out forever. Thank you, Ben.
I just asked you a very profound question, Georgios. Maybe the most profound question ever. And I can't repeat it in English. It doesn't translate, Georgios.
No, well, you could paraphrase. And yes, it is longer.
The question was this. Can you think of a game that you've fallen out of love with that you want to reappraise, that you want to go back to and see, maybe it was just a temporary disgruntlement, and actually I do really love you?
Yes, but I need to go back to something I mentioned early on, in that the games I did fall out of love with, I fell out of love with because of the people I played it with.
Right.
It was bad experiences, and like some really, really bad experiences in some cases, that I just can't shake. I just can't remove out of my head. And since my gaming group is fairly stable, it's still the same kind of people, more or less. If I had a really, really shitty experience with a game with them, the chances of me playing this game again is very, very small.
Right.
It's very unfortunate. It's not something I have much control over, and I'm kind of annoyed that it happens the way it does, but that's the way it is with me. And there are a few games that I really love that I never seem to be in the mood to play on my regular game night. And one of them is Chaos in the Old World. I really love this game. I think it's great. It's fantastic. I can't play it with my group. I don't enjoy it anymore. And I can't even, it's been so long now, I can't even tell you why. But just, when I think of Friday evening, I pull out the box and go, do I want to play this game? My gut reaction is, no, not with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why. It's just the way it is. I can't enjoy it anymore. Another game that falls in the same category is Space Cadets Dice Duel. I think it's a great game. I think it's a fun game. I can't play it with my regular gaming group. I would love to rediscover it. But it would basically mean I need to swap out my entire gaming group and put in new people. And I don't see that happening very soon.
I fell out of love with Avalon real hard.
Oh.
And then a friend of mine said, we were talking about it, and he said, well, it was the game you got into when you first got into gaming, and you played the hell out of it. And he said, if you go back to it, you're going to hate it. And so the next Friday I went, right, I'm going to play fucking Avalon. It's the best social deduction game out there, by far. I played it again. It was fantastic. And these games are totally affected by the group that you play with.
Yeah.
But I would say this to anyone listening. If you have one of those games that you loved, that you fell out of love with for whatever reason, go and, knock on that door again.
Talk to them on Facebook. Send them, non-threatening Facebook message. Hey, how's it going? Would you like a coffee?
And then maybe
they'll tell you they're married.
And you'll get proper shaggage, and it'll be really good, and you'll pull an O-face. What the bloody hell are you doing out on the street? Quick, get in here before somebody sees you. All right. Welcome to the guild. Thank God.
Who?
You're back.
Yes, I am.
How was it out there?
It's problematic. A lot of fighting, a lot of shooting, some lynching. Yeah.
Did you get what you went to get?
Yes, I have a toothbrush now.
That's amazing because to be honest, no offense. I mean, it's pretty rough at the moment in the world, but my God, your breath was beginning to stink.
I know.
I mean, it's a problem. Holing up here in a garlic wholesaler's is going to cause that to happen a bit. Thank God you got out and got a toothbrush in time.
Yeah. No, I think we have everything we need. I have at least one board game, one card game, some water, and enough ammunition for at least 4 fights.
Well, I was thinking back the other day.
All right.
Back when everything was normal. And I was thinking about the folly of what annoyed me.
Ah, right.
And the absurdity of the anger that I would feel at certain things. And it really, in times like this, it really puts into perspective what's important.
Yeah, like infrastructure.
I mean, not having to haul corpses off the front step every bloody morning so I can just go out and have a shit in private.
Yeah, communal shitting is quite fun, though. I mean, you get to chat a bit, Ooh, what did you eat? Rat? Oh, yeah, rat's great.
But anyway, I was thinking about that last post we did.
Yeah, you have to. I don't know.
On the guild,
right,
remember?
I remember. We used to have a guild. I remember that. Yeah.
Before everything just fell to pieces and there was just no internet anymore because it exploded under the weight of racism.
Yeah. That was weird, wasn't it?
I mean, it just imploded. The internet just collapsed in on itself.
Yeah, it was always very dense with racism,
But now that server farm in Arizona is just a black hole. We never imagined that we'd have a black hole on Earth.
Yeah, on the White House.
I mean, the only good thing is that Milos Yiannopoulos fell into it.
Oh, yeah, that was good.
That was good. I did laugh at that. It's the only thing I'd laughed at in the last 2 years. But we were talking about gaming sins and what sins need to be forgiven.
Right, yeah. I remember that, yeah.
And please don't burst into tears.
I'll try not to.
But you know what I found the other day?
I don't know. Janine's picture.
Let's not talk about her, yeah?
All right.
I found an old Samsung Galaxy Tab.
Oh, a non-exploding one.
With a cached version of that page on the guild.
Well, what are the chances?
Do you want to go through it?
Sure.
Just for old time's sake.
Little distraction before the gangs show up again.
And they will show up again.
They will, yeah.
They're always hungry, Georgios.
It's just what happens when you're white and wearing hoods.
So the question was, Georgios, which gaming sins should be forgiven?
Oh, wow. I can think of a lot.
I can't think anymore, so I'm just going to use the people who wrote on this.
Oh, that's a good plan.
Ancient piece of technology. So if we go to, our good friend, I haven't seen him in or heard his voice in a long time now, the Good Mariner.
Yes. Didn't he open a parish somewhere?
A parish?
Or did he perish? I'm not sure.
I got a telegram, and it could have been an E or an A. I couldn't. It was smudged.
Yeah.
But anyway, he said greed and gluttony of acquisition disorder gets a small pass.
I can see why you would say that. Yeah. There was a time where we could afford these things and we would collect them just for the sake of owning them, where, having a thing was pleasurable in itself.
I mean, I had a lot of games at one point before.
Oh, yeah.
Before I ate them. And, I mean, I really grew to love plastic. It was really weird. If you cook it over open fire for long enough, it's actually quite palatable.
No. I'm sticking with cardboard and, sauce.
But it seemed to me, I mean, actually, being surrounded by that thing, being surrounded by hundreds of games, is at one time quite reassuring. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, feels like clutter, doesn't it? You kind of at certain points feel like I just need to get everything gone and have a life laundry.
Yeah, I think it's something about gluttony in itself, the desire to amass anything of any type. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be bottle openers, it could be beer caps, it could be anything at all. Toy cars, games, money, anything.
It's a strange sort of compulsion on the part of the human animal to want to just surround themselves with one particular kind of thing. Whereas I think games is different in the sense that it's not just collecting for the purpose of collecting. I think people may disagree, but also they have a utility that is unique too. You don't just have them around. You get them out of the box, you put them on the table, you play them, right?
Well, yes, to a certain extent. I mean, you have them and you own them in part because you want to own them, in part because you want to have them available. It's why, when before reading was outlawed, people used to collect books, have a lot of books in the shelves. Like, just not because they kept reading them, some of the books maybe, but because it was sort of a way of tracking your own biography by way of books, or in this case, by way of games. You remember, right, this was one of the first games I bought, and this was a game I bought for that or that occasion, and this was a game I used to play for that and that reason, and so on. I think part of why people amass these things, other than, mental disorder, is this kind of tracking your own biography, and I think there's something very nice and commendable even about that. This idea of sort of having certain objects tied to certain memories and emotions, having them in your shelf and looking at them, shelves. Yeah, I remember that, right? Well, you put them and you look at them and you go, all right, I remember I used to play this game and we had this kind of fun.
So you have a concrete object. It's the board game version of the Madeleine biscuit.
Yes.
You bite into the Madeleine biscuit and all of these memories from the last time you have a Madeleine biscuit sort of rebound off.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Yeah, look at... I remember I used to have a copy of Rex in my collection. I used to look at it and for some reason, it mostly happened with that game and not many other games. But I looked at Rex and thought, oh yeah, I remember the times we played this game. There was this fun moment, and there was this surprising incident. I think that's ultimately why it's a forgivable sin, because it's not so much a sin as it is this nice memento of fun we used to have.
Yeah. So we'll move on to Isaac Shalev.
Ah, yes.
Look, he's called Kind Fortress here. It's amazing that now that's transformed to Deadly Fortress, isn't it?
Yeah, well...
I mean, he kind of didn't have a choice, but now...
No.
Now, you know,
really.
I was passing by Isaac's Fortress the other day.
Right, was he?
Yeah, he managed to get sort of laser-eyed dogs.
Oh, that's good. Well, laser-eyed dogs. Well, they're quite expensive, I hear. At least 14 bottle caps.
I mean, I haven't seen a bottle cap in ages.
Yeah, we're quite poor.
I've only been using rabbit droppings.
Oh, is that legal tender now again?
In the certain block, yeah.
Oh, right, okay. Well, that makes sense.
But he said the sin of analysis paralysis.
Ah, I do remember you having very strong feelings about that.
Well, I don't think analysis paralysis is a thing. I think it's been given a name
Yes.
to sort of try and habilitate these people.
I don't think it...
And I don't think they need habilitation. I think they're just selfish.
Yes, I don't disagree with you. It's just the one point that I do not agree with is that that the term was invented to rehabilitate these people. I don't think that's true at all. I don't think that the fact that you can name abhorrent behavior in a certain way, calling it analysis paralysis, does somehow make it okay.
Well, then analysis paralysis people had reclaimed that term, because a lot of people would say, I'm sorry, I just suffer with analysis paralysis.
No,
as if it's some sort of condition that I suffer with.
I remember that. I think one of my colleagues at work used to love to say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm just sexist. And I was like, you don't say that casually. You don't sit around and go, oh no, that's fine, I guess I'm just sexist.
Not that you should conflate sexism with analysis paralysis. I think they're two different things, obviously.
Yes, but the basic argument being that admitting something by calling it out does not in any way excuse your behavior.
Well, the point is, it's that thing of therapy, isn't it, right?
Yeah.
They say the first step is to admit you have a problem.
Yeah, yes.
But people go to the first step and then they stop going down the bloody steps.
Pretty much.
Oh, no, yeah, you know, well, I'm just a racist, you know, I recognise that. No, the whole point of recognising you're a racist is then to try and fix the bloody problem, isn't it?
Yes,
you know what
much.
I mean?
Yes.
It's no good saying, oh, yeah, you know, well, I just eat my own feces, you know, I've come to terms with that. Well, yes, then go and see someone and stop eating your own bloody feces, although that's not really an option anymore. But nevertheless, stop eating your own bloody feces.
Pretty much, yeah.
Eat someone else's feces, it's much healthier.
Surprisingly, yes. Well, I mean, if we had any experts left, we might know more.
So he also goes on to talk about something that you used to have an issue with.
Yes.
This framing device is wonderful where we use the past tense all the time.
Yeah,
it's great, isn't it?
It's great.
Anyway, king making. Talk about your position on that.
My position on king making is nobody has the right to complain. Because king making is basically just a way to end the game, and the fact that you are not in a position to decide when the game ends does not mean that king making is an unforgivable sin.
And I hear that all the time. I heard it all the time. You know, you can't do that because you'll just allow him to win. It's like, well, it's the path I'm taking. I'm not doing it specifically to allow them to win.
Yeah.
It's how I optimise my game.
Yeah, well, there's this.
I'm sorry that it makes him win, but it's just, you know, I need to get enjoyment out of this too, right?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, there's a legitimate argument to be had about how influencing other players in their decision making is legitimate in certain games, and that's all well and good. But at the end of the day, if it's a legitimate king-making scenario, it literally ends the game. One person wins and the game is over. It's not a situation where one person makes a decision that benefits one player and disadvantages another. That's not king-making. That's completely different situation. It's just something that you do not get a benefit out of. And the only reasonable response to that is, well, tough titties.
Tough titties, absolutely. Live with it.
So king making, I think, is the same thing. Yes, it's disappointing that you really put an effort in to win the game, and then somebody else decides who gets to win. But yeah, tough titties. It's just a game at the end of the day. It's not worth getting upset about. It's definitely not a sin somebody else commits. Now we can talk about whether game rules should sort of disallow this kind of situation to occur.
Yeah, it might be a problem of game design, but you can't blame the players for it, right?
Exactly.
Look what I found, George.
Well, even more.
You know, TK.
Total
Kill Petty.
Ah, yes.
Back in the days where he used to be just TC.
Oh, right.
You know, before he got the leather gear and the machine gun arm.
Oh, yeah.
He worries me, Total Kill, Petty the Third.
Yeah, I haven't seen him, but then again, I never did see him.
But you hear him quite a lot when you hear the ricochets of bullets.
Yeah, I'm always a bit unsettled about the yeehaw, I'm coming. I'm not quite sure what the coming refers to.
You just know after he's totally killed someone and he just shouts, Viva Java, motherfucker! That's always horrifying.
Yeah, Viva Java, yeah, I remember that. Coffee, I remember coffee. I used to drink a lot of those.
I never liked it. I drank tea. Now, I just put radioactive leaves in my own urine, Georgios.
Yeah. I'm not quite sure why you would do that.
Strange.
Regular leaves work just as well.
Well, you know.
Fair enough, they don't warm your tea.
It's self-warming tea. It's actually...
That's quite clever.
Quite an advancement. Well, what did Total Kill say?
He pointed out that taking pictures while playing a game is an unforgivable sin, which it didn't occur to me that people would do that, and then I realized I used to do that.
So did I, but I was a legitimate games journalist with press accreditation to the biggest board game show in the world, Georgios, so I had an obligation.
Yeah, also, I mean, it's just fun to see other people play games and, you know, enjoy vicariously other people play. And I think my last game I played that I photographed was Unicornus Nights. That was good fun. I should write about that. I don't know on what and who would read it, but I feel like you should write about it.
But that had a female character in it. You know that's deeply, deeply, deeply illegal now, Georgios.
That is true. I might have to actually, try to hide that fact when I do some writing.
Just say that the lead character was a white, strong man with free-flowing toupee-esque blonde hair, Georgios, and skin of the orangest hue.
Pretty much, yeah. I'll just call him a member of the royal family. That works.
Oh, shit.
What?
Well, it was always going to happen, but the battery's gone.
Oh, that's bad.
It'll never be on again, so what's your plans for the rest of the evening, Georgios?
Well, I did have my weekly shit. I did have my panic attack for the day. That was fine. I think I'll make sure all the guns are loaded. I'll take first watch, I guess.
I'm going to go and rock in a corner and hope that Total Kill doesn't turn his malevolent eyes on us.
Oh, we like Viva Java. I think we're fine.
Say goodnight, Georgios.
Oh, they're coming. Hide.
My God, Georgios.
Yes.
Unparalleled.
Quite.
We have a competition.
We do have a competition.
We're giving things away, Georgios.
For free.
We are going to give away a copy of one of the hottest games in the world. Railroad Revolution from What's Your Game. It's unavailable in the Americas.
For now, yes.
In the new world. And we're going to give a copy away to anyone around the world. You don't have to pay postage or anything. You just enter the competition, and if you win, you get it into your hands. Now, the way we got hold of this game is murked in fog and murk, and Georgios is going to explain it to you.
Well, yes, it was quite interesting because basically we know Marianne and Veronica, the people of What's Your Game, the publisher of Array Revolution, and we talked to them in Essen at Spiel. And what we did was basically I sent out Ben to distract Mariana with a sexy belly dance because
it's gorgeous.
Everyone loves sexy belly dances.
You've seen the Truffle Shuffle, right?
So I snuck in, ransacked the place, stole a copy of Array Revolution. Unfortunately, it was still wrapped, couldn't open it, so I'm thinking, well, somebody else could, bother opening it, so I'm sending it out as a competition gift to whoever wins the competition. Now, what exactly is the competition?
Well, you took it to your underworld fence, didn't you? And he said,
I did.
This shit's too hot, man. There ain't no way I'm going to be able to get rid of this on the streets.
That's pretty much it, yeah. I have only American fences.
So, they're the white picket ones, right?
Yes, they're all white.
That was a joke about fences, you see. Not the underworld fence, but the fence outside a house.
See, my joke was all about racism.
Well, we live in that age now.
We do.
So, the competition is very simple. what we want you to do is it's a sort of four-pronged attack, okay? What we want you to do is follow us on Twitter.
At InfoPerfected or Perfected Info, depending on whose mindless blabber you're more interested in, Ben or mine.
Indeed. We want you to go to our guild.
Yes, Guild 2348 on Board Game Geek. That's a guild of perfect information. There are a bunch of people there. Most of them are nice. Some of them are naughty. You can choose which site you want to be on.
Then we want you to go to our Facebook page, like our Facebook page. We're on 98 likes right now. We want to really pump this up and get lots and lots of likey-wikeys.
Yeah, at least 103.
And then finally, we want you to listen to our show. We're not giving this shit away for free, for God's sake. So,
we want to actually reward loyal and faithful listeners.
Yes, so what we want you to do is then go onto our show.
No, our Facebook page.
Onto our show page.
Well saved.
And then write on a post that we're going to put up, what's your favourite quote from this week's show? Just write up what's your favourite quote, whether you think it was complete bullshito, whether you thought it was funny, whether you thought it was erotically arousing and stimulatory.
See, when you even include erotic quotes, that basically they could post the entire show. Then that's not fair.
I mean, we do turn people on of all persuasions, don't we, Georgios?
Right, but actually, I'm not. Actually, to be fair, we had some pretty good things to say earlier. I mean, at some point, I think I'm quite certain I made a joke that was so punny, it was actually one of the #1 pun prize in Pun University.
You could quote this one. I've got a large package for all of you, and I'm willing to unwrap it in public.
Yeah, I mean, that might put you on some watch lists, but other than that, yeah, go ahead. Actually, take this show, take an earlier show. I'm just really curious, is there anything that we might have said that you thought, this is actually not half bad?
Or this offends me to such a degree, I'm willing to whore myself to win a game on the basis of my own offence.
That works as well. That I'm really interested in as well.
Okay, yeah, so as we say, join the guild, follow us on Twitter, like our Facebook page, and then post a quote from the show, and you could take home one of the hottest games in the world, the Railroad
Revolution, yes, but it's still shrink wrapped. So if you have a way of opening it, let me know. I couldn't figure it out.
Because you can work out the combination on the shrink wrap, right?
Yeah, probably. If they can listen to a show, they can work out the combination.
It's probably 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, I haven't tried that yet.
Hello everyone, it's Nick Mariner. No segment from me this week, but I wanted to take an unscripted minute of your time on this episode. As of the recording of this, we are 2 days after the presidential election here in the States. It was a bummer of a result. I was working on a bit for this show about board games as useful teaching tools. Teaching is in the classroom, teaching with history and English and things like that, but I'm going to wait on that. I think what I want to say while I have a chance is that a lot of people here are frightened. They are uncertain, and time is going to tell how founded our fears are and what we as a people can do to mitigate what might be disaster. And I don't think it's histrionics. I don't think it's people being overly dramatic. We are taking the candidate who won at his word, and his word was that he was going to do a lot of things to damage marginalized people in our society in the name of, I don't know, economic security or some bullshit. What I'd like to say today is that we have a lot of people in this board game community who belong to those groups. Women, the LGBTQ players, people of different faiths, people of different ethnicities, people of color, who come to our tables and they play games, and they are part of our family. And I want to say two things. If you aren't any of those groups, if you are, like me, among mostly entirely privileged identity groups, shut the fuck up and spend some time listening to the fears expressed and the pain expressed by the people I just mentioned, our friends who are in those groups and need help. They need comfort. They need a place to go. And the best thing for us who cannot do anything but empathize to do is listen, say things like, that sounds really hard, and let them be fearful. And then we go to work on their behalf as much as possible. And the second thing I want to say, if you are part of any of those groups, you're loved, you're welcome in our hobby, you are welcome at our table. As of the airing of this episode, BGG Con is in 2 days. I'll be there. Find me. I am the charismatic and dashingly handsome man with throngs of fans following in my wake. I owe everyone listening to this who needs it one great big hug. And then we'll play a game and we'll get through this together. Okay, that's it for me. I love you all. See you soon. Bye.
It's crass, unsophisticated, and emotionally manipulative.
It's this week's review.
Bonjour mesdames et messieurs, welcome to the most exciting and riveting 40 minutes in board game cycling. It is 1932 and we are about to witness a miraculous display of endurance and strategy. A two-man team of ruler and sprinter, naturellement, will move forward to reach the finishing line, sometimes fast and sometimes not so fast. Tactical positioning is as much a factor as is rationing your strength so as not to slowly and uselessly putter along as you are out of breath. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Flamme Rouge.
Yeah. Skip to the end.
It's the one sentence review. Flamme Rouge slipstreams behind many of the racing games that have come before it, but on the final straight, using elegance and simplicity, it manages to snatch the checkered flag.
Flamme Rouge is lightning in a bottle that manages to combine thematic coherency and elegant rules with a gaming experience that is as fast, straightforward, and exciting as a racing game can be.
Georgios? Ooh, what's that in the corner of the room?
I don't know, but it's eating peanuts with its nose.
So, Georgios, the elephant in the room.
It's elephanty. No, it's actually not.
So,
I couldn't quite figure out what the elephant in the room might be, because nothing sort of jumps out at you the way it does with other games, and then I realized maybe that's it.
Well, the question I ask you,
yes,
Georgios, is there any reason why anyone should be interested in a game about cycle racing in the 1930s?
That is a good question, and I shall follow that up with another question. Is there a reason why we should be interested in farming in northern Germany at the 18th centuries? Board gaming always suffers from having these kind of off-kilter themes that completely make sense for board gamers, like farming, like trading in the Mediterranean. That something like Flamme Rouge to me almost seems somehow more accessible, easier to grasp and easier to sell to people than other games.
Well, this is the point, isn't it? I mean, there are these plethora of games about farming, about trading in the Mediterranean, and what saves them, what stops them from being sort of strange things you would never want to approach, is that when designed well, they're fantastic play experiences. And I think that's the thing with Flamme Rouge. It's a well-designed game.
No, I agree entirely. But I think what I'd like to highlight is the fact that a game like, let's call them out actually by name. A game like Agricola, a game like Puerto Rico. There's so many like traditional old school Euro games with these kind of semi-historic themes that have established themselves in the gaming hobby and are easy to play and easy to accept it simply. But I think we kind of lose sight of the fact that those themes in and of themselves, like you said, don't sell a game, don't make people go, all right, I think I want to spend my afternoon or my evening with friends simulating some kind of farming experience. And I think Flamme Rouge, on the other hand, I think is an easier sell. It tells you basically this is a 40-minute game. You're racing. You have two cyclists. You're racing down to get to the finish line first. It's easily explained. You get exactly what's going on. And I think that kind of, instead of asking, I think, should people be interested in cycling games or in this particular cycling game? I think the obvious question, I think the more interesting question is, why are more games picking themes that are so easily and accessible and non-intimidating to non-experienced gamers? And I think Flamme Rouge is one of those games that is non-intimidating and accessible to people who aren't familiar with games.
So, what did you think of my interactive, candid photo montage?
Well, it was certainly an experience.
All right, Georgios, tell us your experience of this game.
Well, my experience kind of had a pretext, a prologue, so to speak. I was approached way back then when I put together my personal list and then the perfect information list we put together pre-Essen, games we're interested in, and this was one of the games on the list. The designer, Asgar, and
gerund,
yes,
Georgios.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
the ing form of the verb.
Exactly. No, since we're totally not re-recording this review because of technical issues, it's not in the middle of the night or anything at all. I used the first name, the first go, which we didn't have as well. And I wanted to make sure that this time I remember his full name and I screwed up again.
You've learned nothing, Georgios.
You've
learned nothing over the last 3 days. Not that we are re-recording this, though. We're not re-recording it.
We're not.
It is the first time.
Yes, it's off the cuff. Nothing of this is scripted.
Well, it's obviously off the cuff because, we're making no sense, but.
Yeah, so basically, he approached me and said, hey, come by the booth. I'll show you the game. And I thought, yeah, great. I'll sit down. She seems interesting. And then while we're in Essen, somebody else told me that they've tried the game and it was a bit like K2. Now I own K2, but it doesn't see much play because K2 to me is can be a very frustrating game. It can be a very mathy game. It can be a game where I spend a lot of time just tense, but not in an enjoyable sense. Just, can I get the cards I want? Can I move the way I want? And then I can't. And then it's annoying and frustrating. So I don't think it's a bad game, but it's not a game I can enjoy. So I was a bit hesitant to actually sit down because I was worried it'll end up in an awkward conversation where I play a game, the designer's next to it and he asks me, so do you like it? And I have to go, the box is square?
Yeah.
And,
I mean, it doesn't help that he listens to our podcast as well, because you're also thinking, oh my god, if his game's terrible, we not only it's not only cringeable, but then he's not going to listen to the show, and he's going to tell all of his friends never to listen to us again because we're scumbags.
That is true. By creating a game that was actually fun, he helped us. So that was great. So what I'm saying is, in a long-winded speech here, is I sat down, played the game, and I was amazed. It was exciting, it was exhilarating, it was incredibly simple and sleek to play. It was engaging, it was everything I wanted from a game. The decisions were clear and immediate and graspable. Their effects were, you can see what's going to happen if you take a certain action. And when you all reveal your cards and you move over, then you move your riders, things changed, and they changed dramatically, though not necessarily decisively. So every decision you make is important, but it doesn't completely ruin the game if you play the wrong card, say. And I realized this is something that I really like about games. When I make a decision, then things happen, things change, which is something that didn't quite work for me in a game like Scythe, but it works for me in Flamme Rouge, because when I decide that my rider or my, rouleur and sprinter, or my sprinter moves ahead, things change. Everything moves around. The situation is completely, utterly different from what it was before, and it feels exciting, and it feels like you're moving forward, and you're always sort of experiencing this tension of wanting to move faster, but having to risk something each turn.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'd been forewarned, right? Because you told me that it was really great. So I came to play it, and we decided that we were going to review it. And the beauty about this game is its simplicity, but the simplicity that leads to lots and lots of decisions, right? You basically do two actions each turn. You place a card for each of your riders. But the beauty of it is from there, you have to gauge where you stand in the pack, what cards you have in your deck, where the other people are. If you can efficiently use your cards to then make sure that you slipstream at some point in the future. So you can save all your really good cards until you get round the bend towards the final straight. And all of that is really, really interesting, exciting. And the game is, you're in super quick and you're out super quick and you want to play it again. You know what I mean? It's completely graspable for those who don't know a lot about games, but I don't really play games with people who don't know a lot about games. I play games with gamers. But there is enough meat and enough thinking, and the decisions have enough impact that it makes the game exciting and worth playing.
No, absolutely. I think the one thing that sort of why it doesn't fall in the same category as K2 for me, and why for example, I wouldn't call this game mathy for some reason. It's not full of mathematics. You're not counting steps and so on, because you have a small limit of a limited number of options each turn with your cyclists, and you can see which position they're going to end up in, and then it's just a question of, is somebody going to block me? Am I going to break away from the pack, or am I going to be left behind? Are there going to be issues? There's always an element of chance. It's not, you cannot calculate the next turn completely.
No, and it's the beauty of the simultaneous choice on the part of the players means that, you don't know what other people are going to do. You can have an idea and you can try and plan out what you think they're going to do, but there's always that chance that someone else will screw you over, and that's always great fun.
I agree, yeah. Entirely. This is, man, I really, really like this game. I really do.
Alright, so how about this? You take a tenuous grasp of reality, a lot of condescension, at least 4 cups, and a slow-wittedness masked through pretensions of prolixity.
Well, that's you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's design.
Alright, now, I think there are many aspects to the design of this game that lend it to being a tense, funny, valuable experience, right? I think it's very intuitive. It feels like you're racing. And part of this is the numbers are good in this, right? Your rouleur and your sprinter. So your rouleur is quite a well-rounded kind of guy. It has a lot of mid-range numbers, and your sprinter has a lot of low numbers and a lot of high numbers. So it's what that leads to is that thing of trying to plan to have your rouleur protect your sprinter, because in this game, if you end up in a space with no one in front of you, you take exhaustion cards. And exhaustion cards are super low numbers, and that means in certain times you might clog up your deck with exhaustion cards and you won't be able to go very far. So what you're trying to do is manipulate your rouleur to allow your sprinter to be able to sprint at exactly the right time. And that's all a numbers thing. But what's so brilliant is it doesn't feel like a numbers thing. It feels like a racing thing, right?
No, exactly. I think one of the cleverest things this design does is the exhaustion mechanic, which basically leads to you eventually slowing down, even though you don't want to, because you keep drawing these cards. In my first game, for example, I broke away from everybody else, was in the lead the whole time, and when there's nobody in front of you, you get exhaustion cards, like you said, which is just a low-numbered card that clogs up your deck. And then you draw your cards, you see a lot of low-numbered cards, and you slow down, naturally. And for me, impressive thing is that this very, very simple rule, which has a lot of game balance reasons, creates this beautiful image in your head of your cyclist being exhausted because they keep running in front of the pack. It makes sense. It's so intuitive. It's so graspable. It's just so immediately you have this image in your head of what's happening, of what's going on and what you are doing. And this becomes even more apparent when you introduce the flip side of some of these tracks where you can go uphill and downhill. And basically when you go downhill, any card you play has a minimum value of that's fairly high. So basically if you're rolling downhill, I think your minimum value of any card you play is 5. So imagine basically if you have 3 exhaustion cards in your hand, you play one, it immediately moves you faster because, well, you're relaxing, you're exhausted and you're spending your exhaustion, but just not, paddling quite as fast because, the downhill slope will just, make sure that you arrive where you want to go. And that's just, it makes sense. It's thematic. I don't want to use the word thematic because it's used for so many things, but it's this little moment that almost feels like a narrative moment because, of course, I'm going to play this. It makes complete sense. If I were in such a situation, this is what I would do. I would use this downhill portion of the track to sort of relax for a moment, just let it all go. And that's brilliant. And that's just really, really, really good design.
There is some little design elements in here that you can see their purpose, but they don't feel like just designy elements. So the slipstream mechanic as well. You see, because the purpose of a race game has to be tense. If you get a runaway leader in the early stages of the race, well, you might as well not bloody play it. You know what I mean? You might as well just go, okay, you've won, thanks, great. But what this game has a thing called a slipstream mechanic. And if you manage to plan that you have a space between you and the next group of riders, you come up into that space and you stay bunched with them. And what that does is that ensures until you get to the straight, pretty much you're always in the race. There's always something you can do. You may be at the back of the pack or the front of the pack, but there's always something you could do. But it doesn't feel fake. It feels right. And especially at the end, I found when I played it, the person who'd planned correctly, the person who had the cards left in their hand, could then, in the final third of the race, execute their plan. They'd use their roller and their sprinter perfectly to execute what would happen, and then they won. So it is a catch-up mechanic, but it's a catch-up mechanic that doesn't feel forced, but also keeps the game tense, keeps the game interesting, and ensures that the 30-40 minutes that you play for a race is 30-40 minutes that are worth playing.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I think those are the smartest bits about this mechanic, about the slipstream mechanic, other than, keeping all the players bunched together, involved with one another, is also the fact that the slipstream mechanic is sort of an extra bonus. It's sort of like a little extra boost. You get a little extra, achievement you have because you played the clever card at the right moment. That's right. Or the other way around.
It's saying, well done, you've done something good, here's a bonus, which is really nice.
Exactly. Again, and this repetition of a moment of success, of an achievement, basically, just keeps you going, keeps you excited, keeps you want to plan ahead. I mean, keeps you involved because you want to squeeze a little bit more out of that card you played. And if you are lucky, if you figure out what your other players might try to do, and you have to sort of take a risk because you can never be sure what the others are going to play because you don't know what cards they drew. And this tension I find really, really exciting. I find it very, very cleverly done. And I'm very, very much impressed by the simplicity of the rules, creating so many interlocking situations, interlocking mechanics, interlocking effects. Like you have a catch-up mechanism that also doubles as a way of rewarding individual choices. You have strongly thematic elements that double as a way of keeping the track fresh and interesting, because the way you put it together, the entire race is going to go differently if you have a lot of depending on which of the setup cards you use. And I think this multi-layer uses of individual rule components is just very, very smartly done, and might actually own some. I'm quite sure it owns quite a lot to Eurogame design.
For sure. It's trying to incorporate balance into the game, trying to keep the game tense and interesting until the end. It doesn't seem flabby. It seems efficient. And that is a fabulous thing.
Playing this made me want to play.
All right, Georgios.
Yes.
What did this game make you want to play?
Well, since we did not record this before...
This is going to be a big surprise to me, Georgios, because I haven't heard this before. Unless you change your mind, of course. And then you say Twilight Imperium or something.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Well, a lot of things make me want to play Twilight Imperium. But no, actually, I did have another look through my collection and did notice that there was one game that I expected to want to compare it to, which was Formula D, but I didn't compare it to that because I think I think comparison is probably the wrong word. I think it's fair to compare those two games with one another. I think they have some similarities, but where Flamme Rouge is fairly sleek and elegant and straightforward, Formula D is either long and random or really, really cumbersome and really, really long. So that's not actually the game that I want to play after I've played Flamme Rouge. The game I want to play after I've played Flamme Rouge, and I'm totally going to surprise you now because you haven't heard it before, is probably Robo Rally. Yes, but the reason for that is basically I get to shoot people. Either, from all kinds of directions, things explode, you can use all kind of nonsense. It's basically a completely nerded out, utterly, well, I don't want to say trash because that sounds negative, but just overindulgent way of doing a racing game. But overindulgent in a fun way, because you have a lot of rules, you have a lot of board elements, you have a lot of random nonsense happening that blows up your robot, or you fall off a cliff or stuff like that. And it's fun, it's funny, it's silly. It suffers tremendously from runaway leader syndrome, because all the fun is the chaos that happens when the robots run into one another. So when you break away in Robo Rally, you are quite likely to win the game, but you're not going to have a good time playing out the rest of the game because it's really dull. So that was always a very, very strange contradiction in the way this game always played out. But where Flamme Rouge is elegant, and straightforward, and quick to play, Robo Rally is crazy and chaotic and unpredictable, which is more or less the same. I don't know, just crunchier. There's more to it. And I think those two games kind of go well together, as in, if you want like a sophisticated experience, I think you might go with Flamme Rouge. If you just want to geek out, I'm going to go with Robo Rally. So those, I think I wouldn't put them too far away from one another because I think they're both very, very good.
Yeah, for me, now I spoke to the designer of this game this very afternoon, and I said to him, is your game, I was talking to him, a race game? And he said to me, no. That was all he said. No. But using the theory of the death of the artist, I've decided that I don't care what he says. So I want to play definitely my favorite race game, probably my favorite game. Although, you can never say. And that's Lewis and Clark. Because I think they both offer tense race experiences. But one is quick and frantic and funny, and one is deep and cerebral and thoughtful. And I think they complement each other very well, and they could both easily be played on the same night without sort of any great mental exhaustion. You could use Flamme Rouge as a sort of palate cleanser afterwards, or you could use it as a starter to sort of wake you up and get your brain in that sort of gamery gear. They both offer an interesting perspective on what a race game could be, and they tell you a lot about different stratas of the hobby, and they let you realize how varied and interesting this whole hobby can be, and how there are so many different avenues and corridors and rooms to explore. And it both can be very inspiring. So, Georgios, should the good people, Perfect Information podcast listeners, go out and buy Le Flamme Rouge?
Is it Le Fla?
I speak all the languages, so you should believe me.
So basically, yeah, obviously. I had a better segue in the recording that we never did. So I'm just going to plump it here. I think this game is fantastic. I think it is definitely going to be a game that we're going to talk about. I'm going to talk about when we do our end of the year episode, when we talk about games of the year, because I think this, in my view, this game is definitely contention for my game of the year because it's that good. It's that tight. It's that straightforward. It's just fun. And it just excites me to play this game or just play something at all, which I value very, very highly, just in general. So I think the only thing that people should take away from my recommendation, which is you should at the very least play it, is that it is not a heavy game. It's not a very, very, I don't want to say it's not deep, but it's not a game where you're going to spend an absurd amount of time thinking through all your choices, because your choices are very clear. I think you have 4 cards that you choose from, and that's it. And then you make your choice. The card is gone, it's out of your deck, and the rest of the cards you can still play later on. It's very straightforward. So I think it's a fantastic game. You should definitely play it, if not buy it, because I think I wouldn't know which other game does this. Is so accessible, so straightforward, and so immediately fun.
Yeah, Lautapelit are a small company that are just producing really great stuff at very high quality. Like, there are a lot of small companies producing great stuff at high quality, and I think the spirit of being in this hobby is supporting these people. We have a unique opportunity within board gaming to support little people. Of course Asmodee have great games, of course FFG have great games, but so do Lautapelit, a small Finnish publisher. Go out, buy Flamme Rouge, it's a cracker. Well, it's been a tough week for people, Georgios.
Yes, it has been.
And I just hope it won't be tougher as time goes on. What we need to do now is just put a brave face on this absolute dog shit of a year and just know that everything is transient and that it may be shitty now, but there's going to be a time in the future where hopefully we can look back and say, thank God we're not there anymore. How do people contact us?
They can write us an email, infoperfected@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, which is Perfect Information Podcast. They can find us on Instagram, Perfect Information. They can find us on Twitter, InfoPerfected or PerfectedInfo. 2 Twitter accounts for 2 twats. And they can also find us on our website, which is infoperfected.com. And I think there's also the Guild, which you can find on Board Game Geek, number 2348. The Guild of Perfect Information. And as a signing off note, the immediate effects of last week sort of changed for me with each day. It wasn't quite the 5 stages of grief, but it was a lot of emotions. And I keep reading these things that, commentary on why and how and who's to blame and what to do now and so on and so forth. And some of it good, some of it's awful, some of it is just piping down any sort of free thinking ideas or anything. And I keep coming back, interesting enough, the internal dialogue I'm having, just as a general way of looking at these things, is something that I'm not going to quote, and whoever's interested can look it up on YouTube, is the church dialogue scene between Malone and Elliot Ness in The Untouchables, Sean Connery and Kevin Costner, talking about how to get Capone. And that's where I am right now emotionally. So I'll leave you guys with that. And just a general hope, be nice to one another, because there's a good chance nobody else will be.
Say goodnight, Georgios.
Not yet.